Welcome to Outlaw Woodworking. For the longest time, I've watched videos of guys that made these flip top carts. And recently I got a rigid oscillating sander, and also I ordered a DeWalt 735X planer. And my shop's not very big, so space is premium, and I decided I'd make a flip top cart, Outlaw style. And I used Bora wheels on the bottom, and I used truck style clamps on all four corners, and it's really easy to operate. Just, you know, when all the latches are undone, just kind of keep hold of it. But you can, it's not heavy at all. And then if you need to use it for a different piece of equipment, and this, if you have a piece of equipment on here, this is a nice height for me. I'm about 6'2", although I've been shrinking, I'm probably 6'1", but this, yeah, this turned out great, and I can't wait to mount the planer on here, because I really wanted a planer, and now I got one coming. So you can see it's not hard to spin around. And yeah, I got 4 latches on it. Anyway, let me show you how I made it. The first thing I do is measure the piece of equipment that I'm going to build the cart for. I then cut 2 pieces that'll be the base of the pivot platform. Once I get the base done, I start cutting, ripping some 2x4s, 1.5 by 1.5 inch, and what I'm gonna do is laminate these in between the 3/4 inch plywood with a 3/4 inch pipe going down the center. I then chop them all to length. I then mark the center and position the pipe on the plywood and glue the first piece. I then position the second piece on the other side of the pipe and glue it. I clamp it and nail it. Then I mark the boards and finish nailing it. Once I have the pipe where I want it, I glue and clamp all the rest of the frame of the boards. Once I have the frame all put together, I then rip down, I glue and nail another side of the plywood, and then I decide to trim the outside of this whole box. So I cut some strips, and then I 45 them on the chop saw and basically trim this box out, make it look a little aesthetically nicer. First sand off some of the glue and crud that was on it, and then glue these sides on, glue and nail these sides on. Once all the sides are on and glued and dried, I then get it ready to, I mark it and drill it for the pipe. So right here I'm marking where I had the relief in the center of this box for the pipe, and I drill both sides through this trim so the pipe will slide through. And we had a perfect fit. I next start work on the cart bottom, and this is where I use the Bora dolly, and I'll leave a link in the description. This dolly I've used probably this is the 3rd time. I used it on my bandsaw, and I used it on my joiner, and the reason I'm using it on this is I was really happy with it. So I basically make the base 1 inch bigger than my cart and mark it all out and then cut it. I've doing construction my whole life, I can cut pretty straight with a skill saw. So a lot of times, rather than fight with the small table saw that I have, I'll just cut it with the skill saw, and it works out really nice. So right here, that's the size of my base of my platform. So I proceed to put together the Bora base, and it's really simple. I mean, there is a lot of bolts and little washers, but it's very simple. Just follow the directions and it goes together really nice. I mark all the holes for the Bora plates with a punch and then drill them all out. It's a 1/2 inch drill bit that's what it calls for. It actually is a bigger drill bit than you need, but that's what it calls for in the plan, so that's what I used. Then I'm using 3/4 inch plywood, so you use the third. It comes with 2 sets of bolts, a long bolt and a short bolt, and if you're using 3/4 plywood, then you use a short bolt. I put this whole cart together. Once I get them all the screws tight, I come back with the torque gun right there and tighten them up. So now the cart's done. Basically the base for the equipment's done. Now I can measure it because I want the whole thing to end up a little taller than my workbench, but just barely, almost the same height as my workbench. So I figure out the dimensions, and then basically that's what the other pieces are going to be. Now I don't have a lot of wood laying around, but I had a couple of these 6x6s left over from some furniture that I made. So I decided I'm gonna rip some of the 6x6 down to make the frames. So I need to make 2 sides, and basically what I do is I rip down these into 2x6s basically, and put together some sides. So I need 2 of these, 2 sets. Right here I take the material and I surface it on my joiner. This is an old Grizzly joiner, 6-inch joiner, and I've got it dialed in where it works really well. I then chop these pieces on the chop saw, and I have a stop block and then I take it over to my small DeWalt table saw with a sled, and I proceed to notch these boards out. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to join these together and kind of try to make it stronger. I then chisel out all the slag, or whatever you want to call it, from cutting on the table saw. Get it nice and smooth. There's some deer that went by while I was sitting there. And then I take a couple of the pieces and I run pocket holes in them. I thought that would be just easier to join them. There's going to be 3 of the pieces that right there that I basically join together, and then the bottom piece will be joined with the pocket screws. So I get these all glued. The next day, get on my apron, get on my sunglasses, or not my sunglasses, but my safety glasses, get the heater going, undo these things. And the crazy thing is that a while back, I ordered this router blade, a router bit, and I accidentally ordered this really big one. And I thought, I got this thick frame that I just made for this flip top cart. I'm going to try this bit. And this bit is monster. I mean, look at that bit. It actually was scary. I mean, this bit is huge. And I decided that I'm going to router the inside of these 2 sides just to give it kind of a unique look. But I'll tell you what, watch this thing. I mean, this thing is crazy. It is ripping. Look at that. That's the biggest router bit I've ever used. And actually, it looked cool though, but it was scary to use. It's just so big, and it's moving at such a high RPM, and it's just tearing material out. but it did come out cool, and it gave it a different look. So now I want sheer, not only do I want these things to be beefy, which they are, but I want sheer strength. So I'm taking some 1/2-inch birch plywood, and I'm going to make two pieces for these two sides and glue and nail them on. And basically that's going to create a super sheer, lot of strength to these two little pieces. So I glue those, and it takes a lot of glue, and I nail them all on. That's a lot of glue. I get those all shot down and cleaned and make sure they're square. And I can't wait to get a planer though. It's great to have a joiner. Joiner works really well, but you need to be able to do both. So once I get all these nailed, I get my router, and I then get out this flush bit, and I run it through all four sides of these little platforms. I then decide I want to trim these out in some cedar, make them even look more unique. And I add some scrap cedar, so I start ripping down pieces, and then I figure out how thick I need to, and I run those through the planer. I then cut them. I then chop 45s, and I trim out this whole thing with the cedar. So these two little sides are getting trimmed in cedar, glued and nailed. I then strap them with the Bessie clamp and then nail them off. Once that's done, I sand them, kind of get them cleaned up a little bit, and then I decide I'm going to run a little quarter round over the whole outside. Just to, it just softens it up. If you hit it with your hand, or, it just always makes it a little softer. It's just a small little quarter round. And I run those inside and out on both of them. I then take another 6x6 and I cut this one directly in half. And my idea was that because of the height that I wanted this flip top cart, I'm not really having a drawer on the bottom, but I thought I could make not only some shear strength in the opposite direction with this, but it would be like a catch for the sander equipment and any equipment that came with the planer. So I put a little 45 on the outside edge just to give it a little character. And this is basically the inside width of the cart. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to basically I'm going to have a little place to catch stuff on the inside, so I can put sandpaper or stuff on the inside, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a drawer. So I set them inside a little bit just to have a little reveal. I thought that would look cool. And then I glue it and clamp this on there. Once I clamp this whole thing, I love my new pipe clamps. I'm actually ordering 5 more, same size. They're so much nicer to use than the other clamps. So I've got all 4 of these clamps on. Then I check it for square, make sure it's looking good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to recess a lag in each corner into these pieces that I made out of the 6x6s. So I mark these 3 inches by 3 inches and proceed to, I'm using a Forstner bit to recess a little hole. That way the big lag that I'm going to put in there with the washer, it'll recess flush in there. It won't stick out. I then use an impact to run the lags in. They were actually tighter than I thought they'd be, even with the big pre-drill hole. So I don't think these are going anywhere, especially with the glue and the lag. And yeah, at this point, everything's looking pretty nice. I'm pretty happy so far. I mark this other side, put these lags in. Yeah, at this point, this thing's not going anywhere. I then get it ready. I'm going to drill the holes in the top for the galvanized pipe to go through the sides. So I set up some, I clamp some pieces on so that I can put this top up on top and get it level with the top to drill holes to be able to put the galvanized pipe through the center. And that seemed to work out pretty good. I mark both sides, mark the center of the hole, and drill a hole on each side. Run the galvanized pipe through, and hooray, it's in. Now I've got a mess, so I clean up this whole mess, kind of regroup, get organized a little bit, and basically the next step is going to be to mount it on the Bora cart that I put together. So I get this thing and I get it on the ground, get all these clamps off, and what I need to do is flip this thing upside down and screw it to the base. So I wanted the screws to go into the beams, so I mark where the beams are, and basically I run 2 rows of screws down the bottom of these big beams. I started to glue it, but then I realized I better not do that because the Bora cart has screws in the bottom and if I ever need to get to it, it'd be better if it wasn't glued on that bottom. So I marked the holes for the beams, pre-drill them, get them pre-drilled, and then I use some I pre-drill all the holes, and then I use some star screws. I think they were like 2 1/4 inch gold star screws, and I put all those in. Now that thing was really tight, ready to go, so I kind of set it up, kind of stare at it a few times, and then say, okay, yeah, we need to set our sander on here and see what it looks like. And I was pretty happy with this cart at this point. The next day I get the top clamped down so that I can bolt on. I need to drill and bolt this rigid oscillating sander to the top, and I get some clamps and a couple boards, and I clamp the top so it's level. Now I can set the rigid sander up on it and basically figure out where the holes go. Once I got the sander where I want it, I then get a drill and drill the holes down through the mounting holes in the rigid sander. I then get the hex bolts. In this case, they're going to be 3/8 bolts, 3/8 by 6 hex bolts, and I drill some holes down into the plywood so that it marks the plywood through the mounting holes in the rigid oscillating sander. These are 3/8 by 6 hex slags, and I'm going to use fender washers and lock nuts, nylon lock nuts. So once I get the holes started, then I finish them off, take the sander off, finish them off, get them through there. And the nice thing is these holes are actually going through all 3 pieces of wood, the plywood, the 2x4s, and the bottom plywood. I then run washer and a hex slag up through the bottom, and then I mount the rigid oscillating sander onto the hex slags. Once I get all the hex slags up through the rigid sander, once I get all the bolts on, I get a wrench and I run all these things down tight with an impact and a wrench. Not too tight, doesn't take much, and you got to be careful because the body of this rigid thing is made out of plastic, but it's nice and solid with some lock nuts, and I move on to the next thing. Of course, I got to play with it a little bit. Right here, I realize right away that the spindle at the top, it hits those bottom pieces, and now you can take the nut off and it clears, but I thought, okay, it'd be better if I notch those bottom pieces. That way, if I have a spindle on there, it'll clear. So right now I undo the nut and it clears, but I've already decided that I'm going to notch those out. So as long as you have the nut off, it clears no problem. But of course, you know, you can't rely on that all the time. So I now clamp the platform nice and level and start looking at how I'm going to put the hinges on. for the latches. It looks like it's going to be nice and compact, and it should work really well. It'll be interesting to see how the planer works out on top. That'll be in another video though. I don't have the planer yet. So now we proceed to put the latches on, and I basically figured out that I'm going to put 4 latches, 1 on each corner, and when it flips over they need to line up, and so everything's got to be dead center. So the latches need to be able to latch exactly on, no matter if it's flipped, which way it flips. So I need to mark them and put them all exactly in the center. So I pre-drill the holes for the latch, and then I'm able to use some 2-inch long screws since it's got backing in the inside here. Thanks for watching this episode of Outlaw Woodworking. I really like this cart. It's nice because I can move it out of the way. It's easy to roll around, and yeah, that's really nice. Anyway, I probably went a little overboard on my design, but that's how we do it Outlaw style. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to putting the planer on probably next week. And thank you very much for watching. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you next time. Later.